Like when it comes to purpose, I found the older I get, the less it's about me being people being amazed by me and my life and what I'm building and my resources. But if they feel like I'm rooting for them, something shifts and they start to trust me differently. And and even though I want them to see certain things and, get out of what I did and make sure that the whole system works, there's something really amazing when people feel seen and known and loved by you intentionally. And I think that's excellent. I'm Havilah Cunnington. Welcome to Havilah's podcast, where we have conversations around faith, truth, controversy in the church, and life. And I'm so glad that you're here because we are continuing our series on what am I doing with my life? We're starting this conversation around purpose, vision, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And I definitely brought in some friends to be with me to do this because I know I'm kind of one flavor, right? I've got the one flavor. I'm probably your rocky road. I've got some marshmallows and some nuts in the middle of it. But there's also others that have a different flavor. And I think it's important that we have a balancing idea of what it looks like to find our purpose and to live within that purpose that God's given us. So if you don't know what you're doing with your life, welcome to being human. Welcome to a new season, and you're not doing it wrong. Most of us ask that question, what am I doing with my life? And we probably will ask that question a couple times within our life. So it is okay if that's where you are. But today we're going to have a conversation around unleashing your unique purpose, finding your voice. So my guest is Lauren Vander Linden, and she is a speaker. She is an author. And she's also, she'll tell you as she's a new mom, and she is a business leader in a Fortune 250 company. So I'm so excited that you're here with her and with me and us together because we're going to have a conversation about finding your unique voice, and you're going to love her story because her story was really about being really on her own in this journey and then suddenly having favor hit her life in a way that was pretty profound and doing it all while being a wife and a mom and working and all the things. So, Lauren, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Havilah. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And, we got to meet each other online, but really in my author school called Havilah's Author School, where we got to meet each other and you began to write your first book. But before we get into all of that, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? I know that I've got things I can think of, but I think it's better coming from you. Tell us where you live, who you're married to, and kind of some new things that are happening in your life.
Definitely. So I live in Des Moines, Iowa. So we're in the flyover state. And before that, I lived in Springfield, Missouri. So Midwest is home for me. I'm married to Travis Vanderlinden. It's a Dutch last name. So it's very, very long. I've got a lot of characters in my name alone. And we actually just welcomed our first son, Judah James Vanderlinden. He's 8 weeks old. And so right now I'm on maternity leave, which has been just a whirlwind, but so wonderful spending time with my family. Normally in my day to day, I lead a team at Principal Financial Group, which, as Havilah said, is a Fortune 250 company. However, I'm also really involved in our church. I was a worship pastor for 7 years, volunteer, and I actually am still on the speaking team and still leading worship when I'm not caring for a baby.
And wow, that's a lot. And I know that because I have done it. And so I know what you're pulling off. So I'm curious, you went to write this book and we're talking about purpose. We're not necessarily talking about or just talking to those that want to write a book, but you did have a unique way of finding your voice and then finding favor around it. So let's go to the journey of, let's talk about your book, why you decided to write that book and what the topic was about. Let's start there.
Absolutely. So I have a copy of my book right here. It's called I Want to Move On, and it's about finding freedom in forgiveness and releasing bitterness. And really, it's a culmination of what I've learned throughout life. So every chapter is an excuse that I had to cling on to my bitterness. One thing that I've been sharing is, a lot of bitterness is valid. It's not really a matter of whether or not it's valid that someone hurt you. The reality is the Bible calls us to release it and to forgive because we've been forgiven. So, as someone who I'm not an avid reader, I don't often make the time to do it, although I love reading books. I made it so that you can just jump to whatever chapter is most beneficial for you and the excuse that you're holding on to most. Something like, I didn't think Christians would do this, or my bitterness isn't as bad as what they did to me. And basically, I address each one of those excuses that I gave with the biblical truths that the Lord revealed to me.
I love it. It's like a handbook for bitterness, really, where you can just go and whatever thing you're dealing with and the real life things that we actually do. I think one of the things about bitterness and offense and pain is that we often feel like it's just we need to dismiss it and we have shame that we even have it rather than identifying the question around it so we can get free because the question and the curiosity is what leads us to healing and forgiveness. So I'm curious, why this topic? Did you have something in your life or was it a whole bunch of things? What was it about this topic?
You know, there are always things that we encounter in the faith and in our walk. A lot of it's spiritual warfare. I really have a conviction to speak about how I was healed, not how I was hurt. But
Mm,
what I really found is when I was walking through a really difficult season, it felt like I was alone. It didn't feel like anyone was addressing it, and I think the reason why a lot of pastors don't address it is because they don't wanna make anyone look bad, and that's my heart as well, but people need to know that you're not alone, and they need the tools to walk through it. So, when I think about some of the most painful seasons in my life, it's been hurt from other Christians, and
yeah.
I know that even as just a human, I've been the one to hurt other people, right? And I want them to forgive me, and I want them to implement these steps as well. But I really wrestled with how can I be hurt by another Christian? I know, Havilah, you have done a podcast series on moral failures in the church. I think that is relevant too, because a lot of people are hurt by pastors or mentors or close family members, people that they really looked up to. And I think that it's just one of Satan's traps is to keep us in bitterness, and really it impedes our life and our calling.
Yeah, well said. I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like the culture's talking about Christianity or faith as this system and this ecosystem, this kind of group that's within this organization. But the truth is, it's people. Like, it is not an organization, it's not an HR department. In faith specifically, it's really people that we work with, and we have broken people and hurting people and controlling people and manipulative people, and we are sometimes that as well ourselves. But I think that that's really, really important to understand that even as a Christian who has the right motives, or even they might, that there's still going to be. It's not if, it's when. Like, we will face pain, bitterness, those type of things. So rather than being shocked that we're facing it, it's better to ask the question and have a reality of getting out of it, which I think is what the book's really about. It gives us that tool to get out of it. So Lauren, I'm curious, as you began to write this book, you have this really unique journey where you started to write this book. Did you want to be an author? And if so, was this the topic or this kind of type of book that you wanted to write?
Yeah, this is the thing that I'm most passionate about. So I think when you go to, whether you're finding your voice or writing a book or even trying to develop a platform, I think you have to ask yourself, what am I passionate about and what message has God taught me the most throughout my life? This one really resonated with me. When I looked back on my life, this is actually the topic that I have read the most books about. And I knew that I wanted to share my perspective and my heart. I've wanted to write a book for probably 10 years, and I didn't know exactly what it would be on, but I did want it to be on lessons God has taught me. And I think he just knew I had a few more to learn. And then when the time was right in 2022, he said, I want you to focus on your book this year, when I was going over New Year's goals and resolutions. And shortly after that, Havilah, your author school came up. And so Travis and we talked about it and decided to make that investment in me and in the call that we felt God was having on my life. And because of that, I had a book 4 months later.
It's amazing. And Lauren, there's just something on you. I could just see it. And I don't often say that about, obviously not a lot of people saw it on me, and yet God's eye was on me. So I don't think that's the most important thing, but there was something really tangible about your life and where you were and your desire to find your voice and get it out there. So you go through author school, you finish your manuscript, but now it's a published book. So what happened in the middle of all that? How did that happen?
Yeah. So in author school, I learned so many amazing things. It's hard for me to not sound like a commercial for it. But you talked about the importance of building a platform if you're going to go the traditional publishing route or the benefits of the self publishing route. And I was praying about it and I felt like I was supposed to go the traditional publishing route. But I didn't know how that was going to happen. I have a platform that is bigger than some, but smaller than most people who have a platform. And so, I'm just praying. I don't know what to do. And I think the important thing that I would tell someone is I kept walking. So I actually hired an editor as if I was going to self-publish, but then
Amazing.
I let God, kind of interrupt me and intervene for the traditional publishing route. I joined Compel, which is a platform from Lisa Turkhurst about it's all about getting people those opportunities in front of publishers to get their book out in the world. And through that, I was able to participate in the book proposal challenge. I actually ended up winning that challenge with my book proposal. And again, I've mentioned this before, but when you talk about finding your unique voice, Lisa Turkhurst, I mean, she wrote the book on forgiveness. Like she had a very public instance in her life where she had to
Yep.
forgive. She wrote a New York Times bestseller on it. And here I come, like little Lauren, going into her book proposal challenge with this book on forgiveness. And I was able to win, I think, because it was God's favor, first and foremost. But secondly, I was able to convey why my story matters too. And it's different than Lisa's. And I can help my network and my world with it.
Which is really important. And that's something we really tackle. And this is so encouraging for those that are listening and watching because I had the same question. I remember asking a publisher, a very well known publisher who had published lots of amazing people like Joel Osteen and Joyce Meyer and T.D. Jakes and all these different hero writers, I should say. And I said to him, well, why would I write a book that's already been written? The Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Meyer or whatever it might be. And he said, no, every generation needs a library and every generation needs a conversation on that topic. And you're not going to read one book on that topic. You're going to read a bunch of books on that topic. And so it's so freeing to understand that. I think we assume if someone else is succeeding in that one area, then we can't possibly succeed in that area. And I think what's also amazing is that you took yourself so seriously. Like you wrote the book, you went and did the publishing challenge, you win it, you get your book published. I'm curious, in the middle of all of that, how did you find your voice? Because obviously you are unique in your own person, but it's hard to really find what makes you different. How did you learn to find your voice in the middle of your regular life, your busy regular life, to write a book?
Yeah. I think it comes with being authentic to yourself and really staying true to that, knowing that, hey, there is an audience for my voice, whether it's big or small, but there's not an audience for my imitation. And I think that that is really important to grasp. If I had to boil it down to practical steps, I would say you need to spend time with God because that's who defines you. And he's going to call you to unique things that he might not call other people to. But the second thing is, this is a hard one for me, but you need to spend time in solitude. And what do we do today? I get home from work, make dinner, and I'm turning the TV on while I'm making dinner. Then I'm eating dinner in front of the TV, and I'm also somehow like eating on my phone and in front of the TV. So we have to find space for solitude if we're going to reflect on who God has called us to be. If we're always consuming, then we're not able to be creating.
That's
And so I
right.
think that's really important with finding your voice. So the first thing would be spend time with God. Second would be spend time in solitude. And the third thing would be to practice. So I like to say, I mean, I'm still finding my voice and my voice is evolving, but because I'm able to practice, it's breeding confidence and I'm becoming more familiar with who I am and who I'm called to be.
I love that. I love that so much. I do agree. Even when I go to write a book, I tend to not read books or hear other people even talk about the topic, partly because I'm terrified I'm going to plagiarize and, get sued. But ultimately, it's because I want to know that it's my thought, my voice, what God's doing within me and not just regurgitating. You said something so incredible, which is there's space for your own voice, but there's not space when you copy or you duplicate. And I just thought that was excellent. I love that. I hope you guys caught that. So I'm curious, as you begin to do these type of three things of learning your voice and trying to figure it out, how did you identify that you could write? Because I think there are certain people that want to write, but they don't know if they can write. Did you think you could, or were you shocked that it worked?
I do think that, I think that I have had God's favor in that area. So when I was in college, I started blogging, and I started blogging because a friend of mine started blogging and I liked her blog. And so that's a message that I think is really important for people. You need to find your unique and authentic voice. But throughout my life, I have been so afraid of doing the same thing as someone else for fear of it being labeled imitation. And
Yeah.
yet I think that God could call us both to it. There's an example in my professional career where a friend of mine, we both graduated college, got our jobs at the same company, and she wanted to pursue her CFA, a chartered financial analyst route. I had actually wanted to pursue that, but I didn't. I felt that only she could if we were both in that lane. Years later, I mean, God worked it all out, but years later, I told her, I actually always wanted to do that, but I didn't feel I could. I wanted that to be your thing. And she, her jaw dropped and she's like, I would have loved a study partner, Lauren.
Oh.
Like you could have been in that lane with me. So I think it's so important to know we need to be authentic to who we are and have our unique voice. But sometimes God calls people, to the same journey and we can support each other in that. But back to your question, because that was a
No, but
tangent.
I do love that some of us don't step out because we're afraid we're imitating somebody else. And we are all imitating someone. It's called Jesus. and then Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So there is a part where I agree. I felt like it needed to be profound and unique and my own lane for me to do what God had called me to do. And I'm shocked at how much it's repeating what somebody else has done just with the voice that God's given me. And it feels sometimes inauthentic because you're thinking, well, I'm using the same scriptures. I have the same kind of whatever, but the mix, the miracle in the middle of it is that God gave you a voice that sounds different. Even if you say the same sentence or the same concept, it's uniquely yours. So I just want to capture that because I think that's excellent. There's some people right now that are listening to this podcast and you are not doing it because your sister-in-law did it or your best friend did it or your husband wants to do it. And the world is missing out on something that's on your life and you are living below or beneath what is possible because you're afraid that you're going to imitate. And yet what you're doing is you're limiting God. And so I love that, Lauren. I know that wasn't your main topic, but I thought there was some life on that.
Yeah, I love that. Even as you were talking, I thought, most people won't hear the message twice because, even you and I, we have different followings, different platforms, different networks. But even if someone does hear it twice, that might be God really speaking with a megaphone to that person. So it's so important, I think, that we create. It's one of the things I think Satan attacks the most is our ability to create because he says someone else did that, you can't. So I think
Wow.
it's really important that people hear that message. But going back to just writing, I've blogged since I was in college, always kind of dabbled, always wanted to write a book. It was very clear when God called me to do it. But I would say I still do not consider myself to be like this prolific writer. There's a friend of mine who helped me with my book writing process, and they are just amazing with their words. I mean, they can articulate anything. They use words that I don't even know how to spell. They have several different degrees that I don't have and probably will never have. And yet, we have we both have an audience. And so I might enjoy reading that, but I don't write like that. I write more like we're sitting down at a coffee shop, and there's people who will resonate with that message, and there's people who will resonate with their message that's more scholarly, but there's space for both.
I love it. Yeah, I often feel intimidated. I'll have a conversation with Rebecca Lyons and she's talking about, how her in-depth studying of the book. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I definitely should not have an author card because like, it's so, I've had conversations with Lisa Turkhurst about it and she'll say a few sentences and I'll think, why am I even writing this book? You've basically assessed my topic and gave me a better title, and I'm like, I should have known this 6 months ago. So it is a unique thing. And again, I'm not for everybody, but I'm for someone, right? So it's okay. And ultimately, you become someone's person. Even if that other person is 1,000 people's person, you might be one of 10 or 20 or 100 people, but that's okay. You just want to be the person you're called to be for those people. So I'm curious, Lauren, as you began to write, what are some core values that you had when writing this book? What's some of those core things in you that you were not going to move on, that were set in stone? And when starting this journey and finishing this book, what are some core values that you had?
Definitely. I think, like I said, you need to practice in order to find your voice, but those core values help you stay true to who you are. And I would say mine would be, I always want my consumer, whether it's on social media or through my book, I always want them to feel like they walked away with something for them rather than just hearing my story. So if I share my story, at the end of it, I want to be able to say, hey, here's why you should be inspired, that God sees you too. So no matter what it is, I always want them to feel like they can get something out of it, even if it's just a good laugh. Um, Secondly, I have a conviction to always use biblical truths. So when I'm doing a message, I typically want to start with a Bible story. I want a lot of scripture to back it up. I just think that we're nothing without the inspired word of God. Um, and really, lastly, I would say it's just to remain authentic to who I am, even if, like you said earlier, you might be not for everyone, but you're for someone. I've found that when I am authentic to who I am, I get the best response. I remember preparing a sermon and I had like all these built in jokes and they went over okay. But then I was talking about comparison and like halfway through, I didn't even plan it, but I said something about like, these 20-something-year-olds on Instagram with their nice countertops, and everyone just bust up laughing, and then, I just paused and I was like, "Oh, you guys like that?" And that was like the second best laugh I got. And so I think as you're just authentic to who you are, people know, they can sense it, and that's where you really see the biggest impact.
I love it. Those are excellent things. I love that so much. Lauren, do you feel like your voice has synced between being a wife, now a new mom, being in ministry, and then being online and then being in business? I mean, there are multiple platforms in which you kind of work within. How do you make sure that it's you all the way around? And how do you not sound like you're running a business on a stage on a church, or that you're not being, in ministry at your work? So I'm curious, how did you sync up your voice and make sure it was you?
I think I've struggled doing that, but I think over the past couple years, I've found that, there is no corporate version of Lauren and church version of Lauren and home version of Lauren. I'm allowed to be who I am in every setting. I might have to refine certain things for the right audience, but I'm able to bring my full self in every setting that I'm in. And thankfully, it's been received well because people know that they're getting the real version of me.
Yeah, I love that. Well said. So, looking now at your life, you're a new mom, you are out of college and in a successful career. You wrote your first book and had this amazing favor, and you're kind of certain things are happening. What would you have told yourself when you were just starting out and you're like, wow, if I had told myself this is the one message I would have wanted to get to her, to young Lauren?
Oh, I wrote the whole book to young Lauren. She needed a lot of mentorship. And I know that current Lauren needs a lot of mentorship as well. But I really think I would have told myself, like, you know, there's there's value in just staying faithful with what has been put before you. So I still feel like, do I need to decide on, one thing or another? Do I need to just be an author, just be a speaker, just work in corporate America? I think that God has called us all to toil the ground beneath us. And that can be really hard when you don't like where you are, or maybe you feel like there's more ahead. But I think that that's been, now I'm in a season where I get to see the fruit of that, whether it be by having our first child or having a physical book in my hands. Um, I'm able to see the fruit of that. But so many people didn't see the behind the scenes of me just being faithful day in and day out. And I think that that's what God has called us to. And that's where the reward comes.
Gosh, I so agree with that. I don't think people understand that when you see fruit on a tree, it's because somebody watered it every day and, trimmed the branches and, it looks really beautiful when it's all built, but it's way different when you're really just day in and day out doing the right thing because it's the right thing and it aligns with your core values. I love that. And I agree. I'm curious, what do you do? Like, obviously you're on maternity leave. So I feel like, just so you know, I know what that's like. And so I know you're probably thinking, well, in my normal life, because this is your new normal, you're probably thinking, like a year ago, I would have said this. So granted, any mom in this room that understands your life is upside down right now. So in your normal life, I should say, although this is your new normal, what are things that you did to kind of make sure that every day you were putting that foot in front of you? What are things that you go, man, if I was going to look at my faithfulness, these are the things I did consistently that really had a great return.
Yeah, the very first thing that comes to mind is gratitude. So, I'm not just working in a small job in the Midwest as, one of thousands of employees that they have. I am just so grateful that every day I get to wake up and go to a job. I'm going to do the best that I can with that job. So back to kind of going back to being faithful, but just having that gratitude in everything that you do. Like, wow, I wrote a book and like I don't know if it's good and I don't know if one person's going to read it or not, but like I am so grateful that God has taught me these lessons and hopefully I can help one person. So staying just having a heart posture of gratitude. But then, day in and day out, you need systems in your life to make sure that you're following through on the task at hand. So every day I'm checking my email, even as a new mom, checking my email and responding to it promptly. That's really important for communication. I have a to-do list. I keep a journal where I have my top 3 for the day. All of those things, living an organized life is really going to be one of the best ways to steward the gifts that God has called you to. Because I have found that, if you cannot steward what he has in front of you right now, he will not give you more.
That's right. I totally agree with that. And it's amazing how when you steward those little things, it really does add up. And people trust you because you're stewarding them really well. I want to go back to one of the thoughts you had, which I really liked, was that when people leave you, you want them to leave with something for them and not just your story. And I think that's really critical. Like when it comes to purpose, I found the older I get, the less it's about me being people being amazed by me and my life and what I'm building and my resources. But if they feel like I'm rooting for them, something shifts and they start to trust me differently. And and even though I want them to see certain things and, get out of what I did and make sure that the whole system works, there's something really amazing when people feel seen and known and loved by you intentionally. And I think that's excellent. So I'm curious for those that are, oh, they're debating. Okay, Lauren, I'm working a full job. Maybe you've been married for a while. Maybe you have multiple kids. Maybe you're a single woman, but you're the only breadwinner in your home. So you've got to make sure you're focused on that. I'm curious, what would you tell somebody about writing a book? And like you wrote a book probably in the busiest season of your life. I can only imagine, like, I'm going to write a book while being pregnant. I mean, there's just so much going on. But what would you tell somebody who thinks, I don't know if I can do it with as much going on in my life?
I have found that the more I have going on, the more I'm able to accomplish. Whereas when I just have a few things going on, I actually will maybe drop the ball on some things. It's really interesting. My college professor told me that,
Yeah.
like, as you take on more at school and take on extracurricular activities, you're actually more likely to follow through because you have to stay organized, you have to stay focused. Whereas if you're taking one class a day and you're able to sleep in till noon, you will find ways to fill that time and you're less likely to complete the task at hand. So I actually found that, okay, it demanded that I be really intentional with all of my time. For author school, I was waking up between 5 and 5:30. I had made breakfast on like Sunday night for the whole week. Get your coffee, went and wrote at 7, got ready for work, drove into work. And it's systemized my life so that I was actually able to get more done, not less.
Wow. I didn't realize you did all that. That's a lot. And just so everyone knows, I did it as well. And the funny part is, I do agree with your professor. the littler my kids were, the more my life was demanding, the more productive I was. And I do agree. I always related it to just being younger. I was like, well, 10 years ago, I had a lot of energy. But I do agree. I do accomplish more, not when I'm busy to be busy, but when there are bookends to things that need to be done. I do agree with you. We are more productive, and we kind of romanticize this. If I have nothing going on, then I'll be more productive. And I don't know if that's necessarily true for all of us. So I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah,
I
I
love
had a
that.
leader at work, when I stepped in, I was kind of in this program, and then I stepped into a more serious position, and they were like, "I've just never seen you be so decisive." And I said, "Well, I just don't have time to be indecisive anymore." And I think you find that, it demands that of you. And so whether you're juggling, three different things, you make the decision, you move forward because you have to. And at the end of the day, it's better that you're productive than that it's perfect. And so I think that's one of the ways that you can catapult productivity and success.
I love it. So, Lauren, I'm listening to you and I see this beautiful, for those of you that are just listening to the podcast, this beautiful young mom with this gorgeous dark hair. And she's got this navy blue blouse on with these puff sleeves. And she just looks refreshed. And I can't even imagine having an 8-week-old in my house and all the things. But I know that no matter how great we look or no matter how life looks, that there are always internal battles and narratives that we face that we have to overcome. And I'm curious for you, what is that internal phrase, sentence, maybe conversation that you have that makes you get up in the morning and get things done? And I'm curious. I'm always curious about people's internal, what do you tell yourself? Or what do you think you're hearing to make yourself show up as a spiritual grown-up in your life?
It is probably just a mix of fear of God and the deadline that, our life is a vapor. The whole reason why I did author school was to be obedient, and because I do not want to stand before God and him say, "I gave you these talents, what did you do with them?" And it's been on my heart a lot lately. We are just so distracted, and there will always be another thing to fill our time. I'm learning that now as a new mom. I mean, when he falls asleep and I might have 20 minutes or I might have 2 hours, but like I can find so many things to fill my time. It might be what I need to do, like washing his bottles and doing the laundry or resting, right? Or it might be wasting it. But there is not a shortage of things that can fill our time. We have to be good stewards of our time because the Bible says our life is a vapor. And I don't want to stand before God and say, "You called me to this," but instead I watch Netflix.
Yeah. Wow. That'll preach right there. That is really powerful, Lauren. And I love that. I do agree. I think the fear of God in the sense that what we have is weighty. It has so much value, and that God wouldn't give it to us if it didn't have that value. And you can waste it. You can squander it. And I think we often think, no regrets. I hear this kind of narrative in the world. No regrets. I'm just living what's good for me. And I'm like, no, you can regret. You can wake up 10, 20 years from now and realize I didn't go into fifth gear. I was always in second gear, afraid I wouldn't have enough energy or enough resources, and didn't take a risk. So I do love that. Lauren, let me ask you, how do people find you? This brand new book that you have out, which is awesome, you guys. It's beautiful. I have it on my nightstand. It's beautiful. But how do they find the book? How do they find you? Let our listeners know a little bit about that.
Yeah, the book is called I Want to Move On. It's on Amazon, it's on target.com, Barnes and Noble. You can find it basically on any online retailer. I'm so grateful for that. You can find me on YouTube at Lauren Vander Linden and on Instagram at lauren.vanderlinden. And I try to share stories that will build your faith as well as just like my favorite memes and funny things because I love to laugh. So that's a little bit about how you can find me and the book.
I love it. You guys go find Lauren. And, Lauren, what I love is, and I want to say this for what it's worth, but I don't think you should choose one lane or the other. I like the diversity of your lanes. I like that you are winning in business and you're winning in ministry and you're winning in your life with your family. I think being bilingual in the church is really important. And so, whatever that looks like, again, God knows, but I think it's for those that are listening and thinking, do I have to pick a lane? I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad I picked one lane, and then the other world, I loved marketing and I loved promotion and I loved to create my videos and I loved doing a dual thing at the same time. And so I just think for a lot of us, we think, well, when I write the book, I'll become an author and that's what I'll do. Or when I become a minister, then I'll just be a ministry. And the truth is, it's really about doing multiple things at the same time. I don't think people told us that, but that's adulthood. It's like doing multiple things at the same time and watching that each of them connect because of the Spirit of God in us. So I just love this. Lauren, I'm curious, for those that are curious about the author school, I know you did Lisa TerKeurst's program, which is fantastic, and it really puts you in front of a publisher. But for those that are on the fence about Havilah's author school, what would you say to them, and why was it important? And why didn't you just start with Lisa TerKeurst's stuff? Why did you go with author school initially?
I wouldn't have my book without author school is the reality. It's the way by which you will get your book, and that will really help you approach a publisher. And if you don't want to approach a publisher, it will help you self-publish because you will have everything you need to get your book out into the world. I needed the accountability. I had tried to write an outline for years, and your author school is what did it for me. But also, your author school was pivotal in how I positioned my book so that it would help people instead of just being a journal. That's what I tell a lot of people is my book would be a journal without Havilah's author school. And then you also really helped me with how to position my book in a book proposal, even though I wasn't in the author school when I was writing that. But you were the one who encouraged me that your voice matters, just even though there's a topic on it. You have something to bring to the world, and you helped me position it so that I could.
That's amazing, Lauren. I love that. It's so supernatural to me that, gosh, 10 years ago, I'm sitting in a back seat in a car with Lisa TerKeurst in Greece and don't know her. Asked her what she did for a living, and she said, I'm an author. And I said, oh, really? Of what book? I was so naive. I had no idea. She goes, well, I actually have 8 right now. I went back to my room that night, Googled her, and was humiliated by me asking. But I look at like how, almost a decade later, the full circle of you being in our author school and then winning her publishing experience and now being published, and just the journey of God. Like, I just look back and think, God, everything works out. Romans 8:28, it all works out for our good. We just keep doing the right thing in front of us. We keep honoring you, and it all links together. And for those of you that are on a journey, I'll tell you what, just like John Bevere wrote, The Bait of Satan, offense is the bait in which we will not live a fulfilled, vibrant life. We will live a small life, a safe life, a life that is immune to the goodness of God because we are living in offense. So please pick up this book. I love it how she did it with the different questions and the ideas that we each get stuck in. To me, we had a conversation about this in our previous series with a psychologist who talked about the logging and how we get stuck with logs, or we want to have the logs go down the river, but it gets like jammed. And I think with offense, our logs get jammed. We don't know how to get rid of this one thought that's kind of blocking everything. And so this book, I believe, will help you unlock that so you can actually get that out of your life and moving and keep moving forward. So Lauren, thank you for sharing your life with us. I feel like it's such an honor to be on your maternity leave. I feel like it's such a luxurious thing to have your time, and I'm honored, and I cannot wait to see the books that come out of you. I think we're just getting started with your voice on the earth, and it's so necessary, and I cannot wait to see what else God does in and through your life. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my honor.
Listen, you guys, if you're watching this or listening to this and you want to write a book and you're like, well, Lauren just basically squashed the idea that I can't have a full-time job and I can't be a pregnant mom and I can't do all these things. And now you're realizing, well, here's a woman that just did it all and God divinely aligned it for her to publish her book this year. Well, you should join us. You don't have to commit. You can actually go to havilahsauthorschool.com. Check us out, sign up for a free class. It's completely free, I promise. You can watch a full hour class that we have there, or sit with me at my desk as I explain some of the things that happen. And then you can fill out an application. And once you apply, if you get accepted, guess what? Your book will be written by the end of the year, which is wild if you actually do it and you follow the steps. But if nothing else, I'm so glad you're here. I hope you found hope in Lauren's story and journey. And what am I doing with my life? Well, I hope you're writing the book that's in your heart. I hope you're doing the thing that God told you to do and taking those faithful steps. Thank you for being here. Lauren, thank you for being here. And the rest of you, it's been awesome. And I'll see you next time.